I'm Rainey Mullen, and this is Pen and Poet. Intimate conversations and performances with poets, both page and stage, established and up and coming. A safe space where you can meet new artists, maybe gain an appreciation for the spoken and written word. This is poetry for the rest of us, the reachable, understandable, digestible poetry. Before I play my interview with Cathy Cook, I wanted to say that Pen and Poet is ramping back up. My time with the Poetry Slam team has come to a close. We had fun. We did our poems justice. And the point is, I'm starting to do interviews again. I'm looking for poets from all styles, all backgrounds, all over the country, and from all over the world. I already have interviews lined up with poets from Canada, from North Carolina, and from all over the Southwest. So if you want to be on the show or want to get me in touch with a poet who would like to be on the show, reach out to me. Email me at rainy.mullen@gmail.com. That's rene.mullen@gmail.com. Or find the podcast on Facebook or Twitter. And with that, the show.
That night, Zapata washed my feet. Handlebar whiskers scratched the itch between my legs like myth.
On the days of our births, we breathe the dust of these memories, and it scours our flesh, smooths our skins, fills our lungs.
All the dead desire most is to live in our memory. All they desire most is to laugh and to dance.
I'm here with my guest, Cathy Cook. Cathy is a local poet here in Albuquerque, and that's about it. So we're going to kind of jump into it. Like I said, in a couple of episodes, we're kind of playing things fast and loose while I'm on a slam team this summer. So starting in September, we'll kick back in with all the formalities and stuff. But I wanted to get Cathy on because I like Cathy's stuff. So Cathy, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So as with everybody else, if we can start with a poem of your choice just so we can all get to know you.
Okay. This is a poem that I'm really feeling right now. I always write love poems just all the time. I think I'm in love with love poems.
Yeah.
And this is the one I'm feeling. Yeah. Albuquerque. All potholes and construction. The only nature we're allowed is sky, her broad chest exposed in the sunsets, her languid body draped across our mountains. But isn't there some wilderness left in me? Some desert moon, sage birthed into skin, prickly pear born into tongue. My tongue will protect me from every scavenger who wants to consume, from every man who has thought he could burst my green skin. Isn't there some wildfire in me? How else have I become this woman who destroys everything she grew, breaks up with the first love, breaks her own heart, leaves her own home, burns the old dreams into ash, so new dreams root? I am the sky, languid body draped across this new man. He is the mountain, the kind of person who can hold my sunset in his arms without asking me to pull the spines from my tongue.
Awesome. I never actually used to be into love poems, but I find myself actually writing a lot lately, which I find really weird because most of my poems are really sad and they're not bad. But yay.
I think I've always written love poems, but now they're more about love of a place and myself and not as much just like, here's this one person.
That's even better.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you can write love poems to yourself.
Well, I think it's it's an exercise in survival, almost, you know?
Yeah, and I'm going to pause for a moment because I left the AC on. I can hear the rumble.
Oh, I didn't even notice it.
Oh, I do. I notice everything. So then why don't we kind of start with just kind of what got you into poetry, because really all I know of you thus far is your performance stuff.
Yeah. My dad actually writes poems and has for as long as I can remember, and I've been writing poems for as long as I can remember, and I think it's related to him writing poems, you know. Yeah, growing up I always wanted to be a writer or a songwriter. I think I still want to be a writer or a songwriter.
Do you play an instrument?
I do. Yeah, I play piano and guitar. And that's what I do with my spare time. A lot less seriously than the page writing. Yeah.
So you do a fair bit of page writing.
Yeah, I do a lot of page writing. Slam was actually really hard for me. Like when I first started, I was terrible. And I was like really resistant to it as a form. I wanted it to work the way page poetry works, and it does not.
No. When did you start then?
I think I've been doing it for about 3 years.
Okay, so we kind of started around the same time then.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
That is
Yeah,
cool.
I actually had never done poetry at all before I did the performance stuff. And that was also on a whim that Robin and I were just like, hey, we both want to do slam poetry. Let's just do it. And the next month we showed up and just attempted it. So I kind of went the other direction, didn't know poetry, did that first, and then started writing page poetry. But yeah, what then, so you said you've been writing poetry for a long, long time. What then convinced you to try slam?
The community. So I had this roommate who really loved slam poems, and she was like showing me all the online poems. And then I realized there was a local scene, and I showed up, and there were so many people there, right? Like normally, just in life, it's hard to find spaces where you can find people to be like, listen to my poems though, right? And it was this thing I loved so much, right? Poetry. So then to see this room full of people who were all excited about poetry and all wanted to be there and all wanted to listen, I was like, I need to be in this space. I need to be here and engage with this because I care about poetry and I care about putting my work out and I care about finding other people's work. So it was like, this is the space where this is happening, so I'm going to be in this space. And then I was terrible at it.
Apparently not, because you said, 3 years? And then before we turned the mic on, you said you were on the Lobo Slam team in 2016, so that puts it a year after you started.
Yeah. To be fair, the local scene, I think, ebbs and flows in terms of size. And when I started, it was in an ebb. So it was like there was a little less competition to get on the Lobo Slam team than there was this year. But I definitely improved. Thanks a lot to like the local poets, Mercedes and Eva.
Were they your coach?
They coached us.
Nice.
And I got so much better at slam because I was on that team, because they really broke down like what the format is and how it works and what will work in an audience. And so it was like, oh, I get the rules now. I can decide if I want to use them instead of just being like, there are no rules, right? Like, yeah.
I Mercedes is working with our team now, and yeah, you learn a ton real fast from her.
She's a powerhouse.
Yeah, she's fairly intimidating, but yeah, her poetry is awesome, and of course she's won a bunch of stuff. So talk about your time, I assume, Denver, right? On
Denver, yeah.
that Lobo team.
Yeah, we went to Southwest Shootout. It was a really beautiful experience. I had this tiny car, and I drove the 4 hours and the 4 hours back. And
Wait, 4 hours to Denver?
Is that right?
It would be 6 unless you're driving fast.
It's 6. I wasn't driving that fast. I don't know. It was a few years ago. I haven't been back to Denver since then.
Why not? I love Denver.
I know. Yeah. I had this... I bonded with my team. We didn't know each other that well before we were on a team together. And then it's weird because none of them are in the scene anymore. Like, one moved to Romania, and one is, right, just super involved in school. And I think now he graduated and has moved as well. And then the other just, isn't in the scene anymore. So it's a little sad. I bonded. I, made poetry friends, and then they all left the scene.
Aww.
Yeah.
I was going to ask for names, but yeah, no, that's sad. Oh, well. How about this? You also said you did, was it Women of the World this past year?
That was amazing.
Talk about that.
It was so cool. I got to bond with the local poets, right? Mercedes went, Jessica went, Rowie went, Gigi, who's in New York now, was there too. So that was really cool. Like, that was such a cool part of it, was getting to, like, spend time with them and get to know them a little better. But then also there was so much poetry, and there was so much good poetry. It was like small fish in a big pond moment, you know? Like, here I'm like, I'm a medium-sized fish, I feel like, in a small pond. And then there it was like, oh, this is the big pond, and it's so wonderful. The poetry was just phenomenal. Yeah, and getting to perform, I think that performing locally, you do the same pieces over and over again. So getting to do work to a fresh audience is so gratifying. Like, especially with pieces that are funny, because it's like people stop laughing at the jokes after they've heard them so many times. So it's so gratifying to take your funny pieces to a fresh audience and fresh ears and have them laugh again, and you're like, oh, it is funny, it is a good joke. People had just heard it 2 million times and they didn't want to hear it anymore.
So where was that one? Was that?
It was in Dallas. Yeah.
Wow. All those names you mentioned, I think Jessica's the only one who hasn't been on. She's too busy.
She's
insanely
man.
busy. I don't know how she does
She's,
it at all.
yeah, she's phenomenal.
Let's see. So then, how about another one? Another poem.
Okay, let's see. This is a piece that is not a love poem.
They don't have to be love
That's
poems.
good, because they're not all love poems. No, it's actually going to get published in the Raven Chronicles, which I think is coming out this month.
Oh, wow.
So that's exciting.
Is that a local publication?
No, it's a publication out of Seattle.
If you remind me, I will put that in the liner notes as well. And before I forget, you mentioned that you have zines that are available, at least here in Albuquerque, at Astrozombies and Bookworks.
Yeah.
So if anybody's listening and digs Cathy, and you should head over there. She brought some with her, but of course I can't show you. But yeah, go to those places. Support them.
They're like $2.
Support her. Yeah, and they're
It's
cute
less
little
than coffee.
They're cute little things. You'll love them. Stick right in your pocket. Okay, now shut up.
Okay. The second to last hookup. His body was the blanket I strangled myself with in my sadness and my own sorrow. His hands were the rope I strangled myself with in his bed in my own sorrow. The names he called me that I asked for, the stones I piled on my own grave. The slap across my face I didn't ask for broke something open in me, something unholy about his body and my body, about the dark pits we've made of ourselves and the flesh we fill it with. Something unholy about fucking through tears. His body was the blanket I smothered myself with.
Wow, thank you. Now I won't ask about that one because that one's kind of
It's a
dark.
lot heavier, yeah.
But it reminds me, a lot of your performance pieces tend to be rather sexual. And
Yeah, that's true.
to say the least. So I'm curious, maybe kind of, I don't know, what made you comfortable to be sharing that sort of stuff? Because I still am really anxious when I get on stage, but that's a topic I still have yet to even consider to touch.
Well, it's funny, right? Because it's like, I don't know. In a poem, I can be honest, right? I can tell the truth. And for me, that's what it's for. It's to tell the truth. And like things that I would never say out loud to people in my life, I can say in a poem. And so if it's in that space and that format, I can say it, even if I couldn't actually tell my mother, right? Like there are definitely poems that I'm like, I hope she never reads this. That's the editor voice in my head, I think, is my mother being like, you want to say that? She's very supportive, though. So there's that. And then I'm also, I don't know, I studied gender studies at UNM along with English. And so we talked about sexuality and sexual like claiming sexuality as a powerful thing. And then I also worked briefly in a sex shop, so I just
I'm glad
feel
I'm not
pretty,
the only one.
pretty open about that part of my life. And then I also feel like poems for me are a sacred space where I can just tell the truth regardless of consequence in a way that I can't other places.
That's awesome. So then let's see. How about, you mentioned your dad also writes a bunch of poetry. So who are your influences, either page or stage or both?
I am in love with this poem by Paul Tran that just came out in a poetry magazine edition. It's like The Scientific Method. It's so good. I just keep reading it over and over again. I also really love Rita Dove, Sharon Olds, locally Jessica Helen Lopez. I'm like so inspired by her work and also by like the community engagement she does.
Can I say that I was reading her book, Cunt Bomb. I brought it with me to a baseball game, and because I got there early, and I started reading it, and then I realized what was on the front cover, so I had to hide it. So I didn't want anybody around me going, excuse me.
You could have just shared some poems with them.
I know, but I have a feeling I was not the type of person who should be explaining why that word was on the front.
On the front of the book.
Yeah. So, but anyway, side note. Yeah. So, others.
Roald Dahl has this series of poems that are like ridiculous versions of fairy tales. They're so good. And I read them over and over again in middle school, which is like they're written for like middle school, elementary school aged kids, but they're like really dark, twisted versions of fairy tales in rhymey verse, and I love the absurdity of them.
Really? Yeah. That's not the guy who did Willy Wonka, is it?
Yeah,
is it? Okay.
Same guy.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
All right, yay. Let's see, what else do we have? Then, how about another one?
Another poem.
Yeah.
Okay. I do have more poems, so this is doable.
So is this isn't gonna be your first publication, is it, in Ravens?
No. I've gotten published in I think 4 editions of Conception Southwest. And then this year I think I have 10 or 11 poems getting published over the course of the year.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So you're chugging along.
I'm
with
getting the publishing. Yeah.
I haven't submitted in a long time. I was doing really well, and then I just got sidetracked and haven't submitted in a long time. I need to fix that.
Yeah, I love that whole process, I think.
Oh, I don't.
I used to not like it, and now I'm like sort of immune to the rejections. So now it's just fun, right?
Yeah.
To be like, take the work. And then when they do, it's really, really exciting.
I will say it is kind of fun when you're doing like 10 or 12 a day, because you feel like you're being productive even though you're not writing things, and as you're receiving rejections you're just like yep another, and statistically you're bound to get one of them.
You'll get something in.
So,
and then I always love, because so often I feel like people want to publish the poems that you're like, that's an okay poem. Yeah, so I love when you get someone to publish a poem that you're like, this is a really good poem, and then they're like, we want to publish it, and you're like, yes. Yeah, that's the good one. Thank you for picking the good one. That's my favorite thing.
That's never happened for me. My first, so I had one poem published a couple years ago in a giant anthology, and then it was nothing for a long time, and then I got a haiku published in this haiku journal.
Ooh.
And I was all excited because it was my first legit publication, and I got a copy of the book, and I didn't even remember which haiku it was because I sent them like 5 or 6. And I read it, and I was like, this is the worst haiku I've ever read. And my ex was like, oh, I want to read it. I was like, I am not reading this to you. And she read it, and she's like, I don't get it. I said, I don't know what I meant.
Somebody likes it. So that's cool.
Or maybe they just thought, I have no idea what this haiku means.
It's profound.
It must be really deep.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, I love the publishing. That's the thing I'm on top of, is sending work out, getting
like
rejections.
And acceptances, it
And
sounds
acceptances. Yeah, I got paid for 2 poems this year, which was new. Yeah, I got like $20 for a pair
Really?
of poems.
like.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, my haiku, I got $1.50 and everybody laughed at me. I said, that's like 10 cents a word, so
Not bad.
shush it.
Not bad at all. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How about another?
Another. Okay.
Yeah.
I write a lot about the people in my life, so this is someone I am really, really close to. It's called Brunch with Esther. Gossip-grown marigolds fold open our accordion chests. Tongue whistles, spirits of our past selves blossomed at the root of the tongue in the back of the throat, the tongue rooted firmly in the mouth, a garden caught between our teeth. Broad leaves, cacti spines, aromatic rosemary. We burst into oak trees, solid wood words ever greater, sturdy, weeded out all animosity, weeded out those prickly, ugly plants who scratch throats, root a foundation for new selves in these words.
Can I ask who Esther is?
Yeah, Esther's, she's like my bestie. We have brunch every week, and we work together, and she just, the last year has been really hard just in my life, and she and I have just, like, leaned on each other a lot, and there are ways that we've both made each other, like, better versions of ourselves by being support for one another. So we have these, like, long brunches with our other friend Tessa as well, where we just, like, process the things going on in our lives, and it just feels we're getting out all the bad. It almost feels like going to church. It's just, yeah, she's a beautiful lady. She goes to slams, and she's always, if you see her, she's always the best audience member at the slam.
Oh, no, I'm curious.
Every slam.
I'm sure I've seen her.
I'll have to point you out.
Please.
Point her out to you, because she's like so into the slam. She doesn't write poetry, but she comes to a slam and she's like the most excited version of the audience that exists.
That's awesome. So I had a question here just a moment ago. Yeah, it's gone. Talk about your dad's influence on your poetry then. Assuming there is some.
There is some, yeah. He writes a lot about nature and family and faith. And I am not very religious at this point in my life, but I also write a lot about nature and family. And I seem to sneak the idea of prayer and the sacred into my poetry just constantly for a person who's not religious. So I think there's a lot of influence just in terms of subject and theme. Yeah, and then he's just the fact that he values poetry and he values reading and writing so much, I think, has shaped who I am in my life.
So then how how critical is he of your poems?
He is so supportive. I think there's stuff that he doesn't read because I'm his, like, little girl, and so he doesn't necessarily want to read everything.
I can't imagine he goes to your slam.
No, my parents live in Las Cruces, and so they've never been to a slam, and they're so supportive. They have, like, a little shelf in their house with all the, like, publications I've been published in on the shelf. Sweet. I know, it's really sweet, but I have never been like, you should come to a slam, and they have never been like, we should go to a slam, and it's easier because they don't live here. So it's very easy to not invite them. But I don't know that I would get up and do some of the poems I do if they were sitting in the audience.
No?
I would have to.
Yeah.
But, it makes me uncomfortable.
I would assume that's the case, but I saw Olivia Gatwood the last time she was in town. She did a reading at Bookworks, and I got there early, like I always do, and I was sitting in the back just chatting with this old man, and we were just talking about random things about Olivia and this sort of thing, and he said, yeah, we're really glad Olivia's back in town. It's been a long time since she's been home. And I stopped and I said, wait, "Are you her father?" I said, "Well, yeah," as if I was supposed to have known that, and he had like a little tag on him or something. But she does some of the most, like, as a man, I'm uncomfortable with some of her poems about, menstruation and all that stuff that I didn't have sisters, so that's weird for me. And her dad is just sitting there, like, clapping along with everybody. It was kind of oddly beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know. Oh, man. They're supportive, but I feel like there are things I'm like, I wouldn't tell you about this in regular life.
I don't think I could do it, for sure. Let's see. Is there anything else you want to hit on? You can certainly share a few more poems.
Okay. Maybe I'll share a slam piece.
Cool.
About menstruation.
Yes. Make me uncomfortable.
Okay. Dear Tampax, you're so optimistic with that lipstick bright green wrapping, keeping your cotton secrets inside. I peel you back your flap with a crackle and a snap and offer an apology for the day you are about to have. It will be long, it will be dirty, you will get gross. But you'll get a glimpse of my milky skin, the lightning stretch marks across my thunder thighs. Breathe in the musk of a placeman, daydream in, women daydream in, where the cosmos begins. Again and again you will cradle the life and death of me in the hole where I pee. I lift that sticky back, release your wings. What a strange flight you will have. I offer a thank you. Thank you for containing my wilderness, my mess, my sweat, blood, distress, for soaking up the lining, the viscous fluid. Thank you for being discreet. I'm sorry that I will be the death of you.
Nice. I love it. Now, when your parents hear it, they will know what your poetry.
They'll know what the slam pieces are about.
And then that seal will be broken, and then they can come to all your slams. You're not going to share it with your parents, are you?
I might. I don't know.
You should.
I should. I should.
Just open the door. You won't be there when it happens.
That's true. They can listen to it in their own space.
I love that piece, though. I've heard it a few times. Yay. Let's see. I can't think of much else. So, let's see. Before long, send me a list of at least some of the publications.
Okay.
Because I want to put that out there so people can actually hunt you down and get your stuff. Also, Astrozombies and Bookworks if you're here in Albuquerque. That way there you can find her little zines. And why don't we do one or two more?
Okay,
Short
there's a
ones,
piece
or-
I actually want to share with you because you're in it.
Oh, no. I am going to delete this one.
You're allowed to delete this one.
No.
It's not a great piece, but I wanted to share it with you.
Hey.
Yeah. My mother taught me how to put overwhelming things in boxes inside myself. Stored somewhere invisible, a vastness that once closed disappears itself into my pores. Feelings I don't want words for turned into pressure behind my eyes, a fragility in my tongue, a catch in my throat when the man on the stage recites a poem about his dead grandfather, because I also have a dead grandfather now, and no words to explain what his loss means.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're the first one to make me cry.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you did that piece at the Grand Slam, and I was so moved because I had just lost my grandpa.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. But yeah, it really touched me. And it's just a good piece, but also it hit me right at the moment where I needed it, I think.
I'm glad that one actually, I sat on that one for about 6 or 8 months trying to write, because I had been he was kind of the only real positive father figure I had growing up. And so when he passed, I was writing poetry, but nothing would come out for this dude. And yeah, that finally came out, and I sent it to my grandma, who has been fairly supportive. Nobody in my family is big into poetry at all. And she called me and she's like, I don't understand this. I'm like, oh, this makes me really sad. But it made me really happy that I'm pretty sure I ended with that one. So it made me really happy that my grandpa piece, which is a fairly quiet piece, still managed to.
It's a phenomenal piece. Yeah, it's really good. And then, yeah, it just hit me right in the moment where I needed to hear it, I think. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. That's so sweet. Let's hear one that's not about me, and then we'll call it good.
That's doable. Let's see.
Seriously. I cry all the time, but you're the first person that's made me cry on the show.
Oh.
Hate you. I don't, but I do. But I don't.
Well, this is good. It's good to have firsts. You know, it's important to take this show to new places. This is a much happier one to end with. Cracked open in the oil, simmers in the pan, egg yolk yellow daisy, hard egg white fried, rings around the sun, rises in the east, greets Tuesday. Old friend greets work clothes, old stains greets work shoes, old complaints. Sun ringed by white bright skies, sunbeams shine on brick floor mopped again. No more customer complaints about unironed work shirts, about cold food, about congealed Alfredo on my work shoes. Old complaints, always the same. Describe the menu to me on the phone, they ask. What can the gentlemen have? What will the ladies eat? Aren't the babies sweet? Wipe the menus, wipe again, old stains. Grease, icing, jam, marinara, slam the back door on accident. Lock self out of the kitchen, bustle, hustle, knives and fire, salads, dressings, vegetable skins on the floor. Adore the quiet. The silence, no radio buzz, no clink, no plates, no drink, no bar sink, no planes to water or names to holler, silent between dumpster and freezer. Do they even need her? You think of your work self. Finally, someone finds me. Go home again, road again, old songs. Peaceful, easy feeling work songs. I'm already standing, too long standing on the ground, sore feet, big sleep, sundown. Sunrise, bright yellow light, harsh, hard like egg yolk, fried egg white rings the center, oil sizzles, splashes, grease stain on work shirt. Is it old or new? Can't complain. Today will be the same.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, Cathy, thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad you said yes, because I like your poems, and I hadn't really gotten a chance to talk with you, and now I have.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I want to thank Cathy Cook again. For the last 3 years, Cathy has performed slam poetry in New Mexico. She tied for second at the 2018 Southwest Shootout in the individual category, of which I was so lucky to have seen, and was the 2018 Lobo Slam Champion. Her work is published in Raven Chronicles and 3 Elements Literary Review, and is forthcoming in Roanoke Review and Togood, of which many of those I will put links for in the description. Her poetry is inspired by the body of the land and by the landscape of her body. Find her work at rewritereread.wordpress.com, and you can even find some of her small zines at Bookworks in Albuquerque or at Astrozombies in Albuquerque. As I mentioned, I'm looking for new poets. I already have several interviews lined up. I'm really excited because I'm opening things up so you don't have to be in my living room to be on the show anymore. So find me on Facebook, Twitter, or email me at rainy.mullen@gmail.com. Thank you all for your support and kind words over the last few months. I feared I would let this podcast disappear because I pushed pause while my summer got super busy, but you all encouraged me to continue. So here we go. Get ready to get to know so many more poets. And as always, stay safe.